Well, hello there. Welcome to the Nature Journal Educators Forum. Today, I will be substituting for John Muir Laws as your host, and my name is Ivea Moore. I'm really excited about our guest today. We will be getting to meet my very good friend, Dr. Stephanie Dole, also known as the Beetle Lady, for our topic today, which is going to be a conversation about leading insect investigations with youth. Stephanie's been educating different folks, all different folks of all different ages, um, about the wonders of insects and arachnids and others for the past 27 years. And so she's sure to have some excellent tips for us today. She visits schools around the San Francisco Bay Area and brings her insects into the classrooms for the school kids to meet and get inspired by. She also has a pop-up bug museum and has led birthday bug day parties, which are a huge blast, and bug gatherings for folks who are either bug enthusiasts or who might just be bug curious. She's definitely inspired me to love our insect friends a lot more. So I'm really happy to have her with us here today. If you want to learn more about Stephanie, I recommend checking out her website, www.beetlelady.com. Now, before we start, unfortunately, due to some tech issues, we did lose part of our recording for today's class. I'm recording this later. So we will be entering into the middle of the discussion. We lost about 20 minutes at the beginning. And the question that Stephanie is addressing right now is how to make insect investigations safe for both your participants and also for the bugs themselves. So safety, that's where we're going to begin with my dear friend Stephanie. So let's listen in.
So I think the perception of how dangerous they are is a lot higher. People expect it to be more dangerous than it actually is. I have some great tools I'll show you for wild bugs. Forceps. You can have ones that are like this. Did I bring back in from sorting those bees? I have some other ones that are featherweight that are a little more gentler. Oh, here's some. Here they are. So you can get like a hard forceps like this. And this is good for handling things that you're not totally sure you want to handle, that sort of thing, but it can be a little tough, right? It's a harder forceps. There are these that are called featherweight forceps, and these are really awesome because they're very gentle. Now, the problem with these is they bend really easily, so they can get messed up in your bag. So sometimes people will keep these. One trick I've seen with these is, oh, in fact, I have it right here. Sometimes people will keep these in a portable toothbrush holder or something like that. So this, you can keep some of your more delicate things like that, and then it doesn't get messed up. But these are great. In fact, it's funny. Yesterday, I was at a lab at Santa Clara University. I'm writing a book right now, and one of the chapters has to do with these bugs called web spinners. And I was in the lab, and the Dr. Janice Edgerly was letting me photograph her web spinners. And I reached with my bare hand, and she went, "Oh no, it's a beetle person trying to touch my web spinners," because beetles are a lot tougher. So I forgot that web spinners can be more delicate. So this forceps are really great, featherweight forceps. I also carrying a bug jar, because if you have a bug in your hand, they're not gonna, I'll show you. In fact, let me bring somebody out. So if you have a bug in your hand, right? Like I'm gonna get out my Jerusalem cricket, and these guys can pinch. But a rule for bugs not pinching you, let's switch my camera. There we go. Okay, so here's a Jerusalem cricket. And if you notice, it's gonna run all over my hand. And it's not gonna bite me unless, let's try to get closer to it. Okay, as soon as I try to hold it down, that's when those jaws open up. Do you see that? Because I'm holding it down. But as long as I'm letting it walk, it doesn't feel trapped. So I find, by and large, this is a works for a lot of bugs. Basically, as long as you're not making them feel trapped, they feel fine. Now, that's not going to say you'll never get pinched. I make a distinction between what this guy could do is what I would call a pinch. It wouldn't break the skin, so just be like a little bit of a pinch on my hand, or and something that actually stings or can draw blood, right? That's very different. But I've seen, like, one of the world's experts in wasps. I've seen videos of him holding a tarantula hawk like this. And as long as he doesn't put his finger down on her, she doesn't care. She's not going to try to sting him. So that's a good general rule. But then let's say you want to nature journal this, always having some sort of a bug jar. Now, this is one I can share a link to this. It's actually one of my favorite bug jars to get. I'm often sharing these with entomologists. This is a really cheap kind of bug jar that they sell through the Hardy supply shop, Oriental Trading. It's got holes on the top for air, and it's got a little magnifier, and then it's got the only thing is it doesn't have a screw top, but it stays on really well. In fact, one of the irritating things is it will sometimes make a really loud squeak when you open it, because it's got that screw top. But like a bug like this can't even fly out of that or crawl out of it. So you can have that on your journal page. Another cheap option too is to, and this is what I give out. These cost about $10 for a dozen. So they end up being about $1 a piece, is salsa cups. And this is another thing that I'll have for those pooters. So that's another great thing for bugs in the wild. I'll also say my biggest rules as far as when you take a bug, right, you want to put it back. And you want to try to put it back as close to where you found it as you can. If it's a flying thing, you can be, let's say you're out in a field and you catch something that flies. Flying things, if they're butterflies and things, they can really injure themselves being kept in a jar like this for very long. So you want to be conscious of that. You also want to be conscious of having the jar in the sun, especially if they have the magnets or magnifiers on the top. So that's another thing to be conscious of. You also, if you lift up a log, basic protocol for collecting outside is, let's say you've got a log and you're turning it over to find bugs, which is a great place to find bugs. You always want to gently turn it back and leave it how you found it, because this is a habitat. And if that log is left to dry out, things can die. If you see anything that you're worried you might squish, you can move it to the side of the log, like salamanders or something that I frequently freak out about not squishing. And so I'll move them over so they can easily crawl back under. Then I put the log down and then they're next to it. Does that make sense? I would say with wild bugs, it's okay to say you don't know. So I'm an entomologist. I have a PhD in this. I am not one of those entomologists who can rattle off every scientific name of everything I see. For the most part with entomology, it gives you a framework, a reference to know what to look up and know what groups you're to narrow it down. But it's okay to say you don't know. But by and large, things are not going to be, most things are harmless. The perception that things are more harmful is usually it's skewed that way, that people are more worried than they need to be. Yeah, I think that hopefully that answers your question.
That was a fantastic question.
Yeah. Should I show you guys how to make this pooter really quick, since that kind of goes into this? Okay. So what a pooter is, I'll show you. I have a basic, when I have a basic bug kit for like going out, I'll have a pair of forceps. I'll usually have a cheap magnifying glass. And then and then the jar. And my most useful tool is this. And this is a pooter as made by a company that doesn't exist anymore called BioQuip. But a pooter like this usually costs about $12 to $14, depending. And you put it in your mouth. So I'm stuck with the fact that I can have dozens of these. I have a box full of these that I can share with lots of kids. I have lots of forceps that I can pass out. I have nets I can pass out. But these people put in their mouth. So this is one of the problems with this. So an easy way to make a pooter, it's going to look like this. So a pooter is a tool for sucking up bugs. Let me show you how it works. If I have a little bug that I want to suck up, you're way too big, Jerusalem cricket. let's say this little piece of bark is a bug and I want to suck it up. I'm going to take my pooter and I'm going to put it here and I'm going to suck it in there. And it keeps me from eating the bug because it's got a little screen. So the way we make one, it looks like this. You need a salsa cup. Here, I'll show you on my camera. So what you'll need for it, and I was looking for, I somewhere have instructions that I made out for this, but it's pretty simple. So you need a salsa cup, 2 straws. I'm hoping that once I run out of these plastic straws, I'm going to start to investigate some of the non-paper straw options. Like I've had good luck with the straws that are made out of sugarcane and things like that. Then I go and I get, just fly away. It did. Oh, I go and I get some mesh fabric, so some like bridal veil fabric, like that. And then I have, when I teach with this, I have some of these hole punchers. And if you notice, this hole puncher is kind of broken. I've basically taken the thing that keeps it closed tighter and popped it off. But you can use it with one that has the tighter close. 2 optional items for it, for making this, are a Sharpie marker and some washi tape. Let me zoom out. So that's what I use for these, just these items. A salsa cup and lid, 2 straws, a piece of this bridal veil fabric, a hole punch, a Sharpie, and some washi tape. Let me change back to this and I'm going to show you how I put this together. And this is so, even if you buy all the supplies for this, during the pandemic, the library had me, San Mateo County Libraries had me put together a kit for 1,500 kids with this, and it cost $120 in materials. It's not expensive. So you take your salsa cup and you punch holes on either side. So I'm going to punch one on one side, a bit in the middle, and then approximately, so see that hole's there now, and then approximately across from it. There's occasionally a thing will crack when this happens, like a big crack, and then it won't work, but usually it works pretty well. So just salsa cup with 2 holes. If you find having lots of these is not good, then you have one at home and you pre-punch. That's what I did for the kits for the students, because that's the only thing you really need a reusable tool for. Then I buy the straws with wrappers, simply because then people know they're sterile. So the first one's easy. You take a straw and that bendy end. I like the ones with the bendy end. And you stick it in there. And it doesn't have to be far, because this kind of punch and this kind of a straw are the same diameter. And that may take a little experiment, although I think that these 2 are very standardized things in the world. So hopefully that's true, but you know, I would check it out beforehand. And then the second one is a little different. There, they have a big piece of mesh. I usually give the students about a little square of mesh like this, and you can fold it in half or even several times. And on this one, same thing, you unwrap the straw. I always get the students to hold on to the straw, because often people like to test these before they use them with a real bug, because they want to see that they work. So if you hold on to the straw wrapper, you can do that with it. And then through trial and error, I found that the best thing to do for this is to lay this on top of the hole and then push the straw through. So not wrapping the straw. That's the first instinct. People want to wrap the straw and then push it through, but then that stretches the mesh a lot. And so then it makes the openings kind of wide. So on top like that, and then kind of wriggle this in, but it doesn't take much, just a little like that. And then that's it. That's pretty much it. Then I put the lid on. The 2 optional things that I give them, this is good if you're working with a large group, is a Sharpie to write their name. I encourage people to either write their name on the bottom or on the side, because that's your really good observation lid. So, you know, Beetle Lady. And then the washi tape is an additional thing that I like, because I tell them when I see a bug and I'm going to get to poot the bug, I'm all excited, and I sometimes my brain doesn't think which one is okay to put my mouth on. The one with the screen is okay to put my mouth on if I don't want to swallow a bug. So I like to somehow flag that with washi tape. It could be a flag just like that. It could be wrapping it up. I mean, it could be the opposite. It could be you flag which one goes to the bug, but you need to decide that and remember it. So that's it. That's how you make one of these. And then I'll take the, I can take some of the wrapper. So I always make this with my nature journaling class and my bug class. If I'm taking kids outside, I do this too. So now all I have to do is take that straw and suck in, and ta-da, it's in there now, the little white piece of paper. There it is. So this is the most gentle way to pick up any bug. It works really great. And then for releasing them, I simply tap them out with the, like that. There it is. So yeah, this is a really simple tool. You are using plastic straws. I get that people don't love that. So maybe we figure out if we can use some other kind of straw. Paper probably wouldn't work. I will say that around first grade is when kids really know the difference between suck and blow. If you do this with too young kids, they will just fill this with spit. They will blow into it and it'll get full of spit and bugs covered in spit. So I try to emphasize suck, like drinking a milkshake. So yeah, and you know, a couple times in my life I've ended up with a bug in my mouth, but not very many times. And anything that's pootable is something that's going to fit through that straw. So our typical ladybugs kind of are at the edge of it. Some of them get stuck in the straw. And whenever I go out in the field with these, I always bring some extra straws because every now and then somebody loses a straw or things like that. But it's a very simple way to make something that would cost $14 or so to have, and that you wouldn't be able to reuse very easily. So it's a great way to collect bugs in a very gentle way. Yeah. So and typically I'll tell you that out where I live, to get these supplies, I'll go to a store like Smart and Final. So any place that does like restaurant supply, if you're going to do large numbers, right? They typically sell these in things of 50 or 150 or 125 is the lids, and the cups also. So that's where I'll get them. But if you're only doing it for maybe 12 people, maybe you just save your salsa container. If you go to a taqueria often and they give you a few containers of salsa, if you get straws you don't want, yeah. Any questions about that? That's my most useful tool. Maybe I'll add that one of the ways to use this tool, so if you're using a butterfly net or an insect net out in nature when you're doing nature journaling at all, the two ways that nets get used, the first one's the one that people would think of, right? If a big bug flies in front of me, I'm going to take my net and I'm going to go like that and catch it. But for entomologists, that's actually not the most common way we use our net. We're going to be doing something called sweeping. And how sweeping works is if you have some vegetation, you're going to go into it with your net and go back and forth and back and forth. So if I'm like in the grass, or there's a tree right outside here, I do like that through the branches of the tree. And once you stop moving the net, you can turn it like this. And now you've got teeny tiny insects in here. And this is where the pooter comes in handy. So this is a way you can use a pooter and a net to observe little bugs. And then I just basically go through my net. I squat down with it, slowly start to look into it and suck up what I see. So that's the way that the pooter is used a lot by entomologists. That's how I'm going to be going outside and collecting bugs a lot more than waiting for something big fly right in front of me. So yeah. Let's see, when you cut, or yeah, you're pooting. Yep.
I have a question.
Say
I were to use the net to capture a bee and I'm done looking at it. When I just leave it open, does it fly away or does it want to sting you first?
No, I've never had them come after me. I mean, I'll hold it far if it's a stinging insect, but just tilting it like that and letting them
Okay.
out. Yeah, every now and then something will have some other idea and they'll be hanging out in the net. And then I might try to gently like invert it to, get it the other inside out and let it out that way. But almost always, I've never had anything come after me. They just want to keep going. If I'm going to put a stinging thing into a jar from the net, then there's this whole complicated maneuver of you've got it in here, you got to get the jar there, and then you got to get the lid somewhere, and then you got to kind of switch it. But again, I've never been stung that way. It's kind of funny. You'll go out collecting forever. I have a story I like to tell where I did a 5 week long field course through UC Davis where we were at a field site for 5 weeks learning insect identification, collecting insects. We only had Sundays off. Every single day, all day, we had to do a 200 family insect collection. Didn't get stung once. I come back to UC Davis, and this is back before email was as widely used. So I had to take a paperwork for one of my professors from one department to another, and I got nailed by a wasp walking across campus, just out of nowhere, just stung. So it's kind of funny how that worked. Let's see. Upside down umbrella hanging on a branch and giving it a shake. Yeah. Yeah, so that's would function like what we call a beading sheet. And a beading sheet is simply a frame. It looks like a kite. It's just a basically fabric stretched over a frame. So the question that Sarah's asking is if you take an umbrella upside down and put it under a branch and shake the branch. This is called beading. And what we would do is we'd put the something under the branch. I have a beading sheet in the garage I could bring out, but basically picture like a frame of fabric on like an X frame, right? So it's a square of fabric that's stretched on a wooden frame. An umbrella would function, beading, B-E-A-T, because then what you do is I will often take this part of the net, you hold the sheet under, and you literally beat the branch with this to basically shake bugs off of it. And beading sheets are a very commonly used collecting thing also. But an umbrella would be a great one. What else have I seen? Oh, embroidery hoops. So, you can buy an embroidery hoop, one of those round wooden embroidery hoops. You can get them for cheap at Joann when they have a coupon, and stretch a piece of muslin fabric or an old scrap of bed sheet or old t-shirt, right, on that. And you can hold it under the branch and shake the branch. And you'd be surprised how many little things will fall out from that. So, yeah. So that's a really great idea. I'm glad you brought that up to use for nature journaling. Now, all of these are going to typically be really small things. So, maybe you have your magnifier, maybe you have one of those little pocket microscopes or something like that. You can hopefully, but it's okay. You just maybe you just draw a little drawing, or you try to extrapolate what it looks like the best you can. But yeah, the beading sheet combined with the pooter is a very common collecting technique. Yeah.
I was wondering, are there any common good first bugs to hold for bug reluctant kids?
Yeah, so there's the one that Gargi's going to be really familiar with. Beetles. Okay, so I would say beetles by and large, right? If we're talking about going out in nature, beetles are a great group. I used to be able to say there were no venomous beetles in the world. And then somebody had to go and find one in the Amazon that has a stinger on its antennae. But unless you're in the Amazon and you see a really big longhorn beetle, and I have never gotten to see one of these, beetles are not venomous. So the worst a beetle can do is pinch. And you usually can tell if a beetle's capable of pinching because they have a big jaw in the front, right? So beetles are a great one. And a fun thing, I'll dovetail into one of my other fun things that I love doing with insects, with nature journaling, is a lot of beetles, one of their main defenses is chemical defenses. So if you've ever held a ladybug and you've seen a yellowish, orangish fluid come out of the ladybug, this is a defense called reflexive bleeding, where the ladybug can actually release some of its hemolymph through its joints, like essentially its knees and its elbows. That defensive chemical in their hemolymph, which is their insect blood, basically it tastes horrible. It's poisonous. Yes, reflexive bleeding. And it's basically if you taste bad and you're poisonous, you don't want something to have to eat you to figure that out, right? So it's giving them a sample, a little taste of that. I will, in front of people when nature journaling, I will taste the chemical to let them know what it tastes like. It's bitter. It's not gonna poison me. If I ate a bunch of ladybugs, I might throw up, but if I taste it, it's fine. And I will often include those defensive chemicals, whether they come from the joints or these carabid beetles will usually spit them out of their mouths. I'll often smear them on my nature journal page. So that's something you can do. I did that with this. Katie, here's a katydid that I did that with. So smearing it on there to say, oh, look, that's part of my page now, is that chemical. And so beetles are by and large a very good one to hold. Hymenoptera, so that's ants, bees, and wasps. Those are ones that by and large you want to be cautious with. It's great if you can recognize one that's incapable of stinging, like a drone bee, or a male of any species, but that, that's not something that everybody is going to do, and it doesn't happen very often. So I'd say largely if it looks waspy, no. If it's a beetle, that's great. True bugs get a little iffy, like things like your box elder bugs and your water bugs, because some of them, if they have big enough mouth parts, can pierce you with them, and it's quite painful. So beetles are one of my favorite beginning bugs to have people hold. And not just because I like beetles a lot, but like that woman said when I was touching her web spinners yesterday, they're also really hardy. So on the flip side of worrying about the bug being hurt itself, us hurting the bug, beetles are armored in a way that makes them a lot less delicate than something like a butterfly. Butterflies aren't as delicate as people like to think they are. If you touch a butterfly, it's not going to kill it, but they will, especially if you're holding them, they want to flap their wings, and that they'll damage their wings by flapping. And if a kid puts one in one of these jars, it usually gets pretty stressed flapping around. So flying things are not my favorite for that reason. And pretty much in my live tanks here, I have only a few things that are even capable of flying.
Thank you so much. And I love that you explained why you choose that one specifically, why beetles. Lisa has a question about what's a good book to learn about typical bugs in the backyard?
I can actually, this is something I could drop in here. Hold on. I made a field guide recommendation when I just did, let's see, is it going to let me just restricted on your account admin? Huh. Okay, it said I can't do a PD. Maybe if I send it to you, let's see if you can post a PDF, Avea. I'm gonna send you one right now. Okay. So this is a list of field guides that I really love. We have a new field guide that's out that is really good. And this just came out last year. It's the new Princeton Field Guide to Insects of North America by John and Kendra Abbott. And they are photographers. And so they have a very good, photographic representation. So this is on that list. I don't know if you're able to post that list to the group, or but this one's on that list for sure. I also will say a couple things about field guides. If you're a birder or a mammal person, insects are going to be entirely different. So there are 1 million known species of insects in the world, and we're finding tens of thousands every year. So the likelihood that you're going to get a proper species level identification on an insect is very different from if you're looking at a bird and you can say, that's a cardinal and this is its species name and I can tell what it is. So just understand that going into it, that if you can get the family even, that's fine. for insects, that you may not know exactly what species you're dealing with. For that reason, the regional guides can be really good. So depending on where you live, I know that, let's see, which company is it? A lot of the regional ones. In California, we have these California natural history guides. So the more specific you can get, the better. Although I will say that, you know, just because this isn't my favorite format, the California one is not always one that I go to. So it kind of depends. It's what format works really well for you. There's also the more specific you can get if you're okay, like you're saying, let's say you're going to do an exploration with ants. There's a really great series. So here's an example, like Dr. Eleanor's Common Ants. These are great. I love these books. So this will give you a lot of the most common ants that you'll find. So the more specific you can get with insects, the better, because a field guide is going to be trying to fit in so much stuff. So if you know you're doing ants, you know, there's field guides to ants. If you know, there's field guides to bumblebees. If you can get a field guide to California bees or bees of the desert Southwest, like the more specific you can get, because then you're going to rule out all of that. You know, if you're in the Sonoran Desert, you're not going to be looking through things that are only going to be in the East Coast of the United States or things like that. So this is a great, I would say, go more specific. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions. Somebody asked, I saw some good questions too. Oh yeah, a study over time. Yeah, so I think once, so Sarah was asking if we wanted to do a study over time, like on a tree growing at a school or in a public place, how often could we use a net or beat or poot or collect to see the species change over the year without causing too much harm to the ecology of the tree? Especially if you're going to do catch and release, it's really not going to make a big difference. You know, I really appreciate that you don't want to cause too much disruption. You know, I come from a background where we even, you know, we would do destructive collecting where we'd actually be fogging trees in the rainforest to get, you know, specimens, dead specimens that we take back from the field and that sort of thing. And even that, like, spaced out over years, didn't make a big impact. You know, as long as you're going to return things back, it's hard to say, you know, because there are some insects that are incredibly abundant, right? You'll look at a tree and you'll see these things called bark lice, sosids, and I've seen hundreds of them on a single tree. So if you take a few off, even if you don't, they don't get returned to the tree, it's not going to make a big difference. But there are other things like, you know, certain ground nesting bees where there may be only a few dozen females out in the area who are, and it's also what stage of their life cycle are they in. For instance, one of the things that has been driving entomologists crazy is all these videos on social media of people saving bumblebees that they find on the ground. These are often nesting females that are searching for a nesting site, and they're taking them into their homes and feeding them sugar water and basically preventing them from reproducing because they thought that the bee should be flying instead of crawling on the ground. So, you know, sometimes it just depends on the animal, but I would say by and large, like if you're gonna look at a tree, especially if you're in a park environment, in an urban environment, I think you're totally fine. There's much more damaging things going on for those ecosystems in an urban environment than anything like that. But I appreciate you not wanting to do that, right? And that's why part of why I moved away from the collecting with my students. I would just end up with boxes and boxes full of dead common insects that, you know, they didn't really need to do. Oh, and somebody mentioned insect frass or poop, spreading that on the page. That is definitely something. Okay. Oh, Gargi asked, kids tend to have a small attention span, but are also so curious. How do you find a balance between giving them structure to explore the bugs, but also if they deviate from the structure, still support them in their exploration, especially if you're managing a group of ages 5 to 10. Yeah, and if we're talking about in the context of nature journaling, one of the biggest challenges I have found is that you can have a group of kids the same age and there can be such a wide range of attention spans, right? I had a homeschool group that I was working with for many months that was equally divided, 4 girls, 4 boys. And it's, gender stereotypes are tricky, right? But by and large, the girls would be focused for the full hour and a half. They would be barely getting into the depths of their nature journaling, right? They'd be peeling back another layer, right? Versus the boys would be done and smashing pencils against rocks and things like that to distract themselves. With nature journaling especially, I always try to remind people that the really good stuff happens when you think you're done, right? And I'll give examples of that. I often, I'm still following the model of nature journaling with my students, so that where I'm actually doing some nature journaling. And even when I do something that I've done 1,000 times, like one of my intro things that I do for nature journaling is, because I keep so many tarantulas, I have tarantula molts. So I've shed exoskeletons. So this is another thing I would just generally encourage you to do, is one way to introduce people to insects and arthropods and things they might be squeamish about is if you can find an artifact of that animal. So a leftover molt, a wing, a dead bug that you found on your windowsill, a gall from a gall wasp, or something that's like some evidence of that animal rather than the animal itself. Especially also because then this gets over the worry about, well, is this thing going to run away before I finish drawing it? You've got it here and it's not going to do that. But yeah, so that's something, especially with nature journaling, I find really challenging. Live bugs I find to be a really great equalizer for many, many ages. Like when the live bugs come out, whether it's out in nature or in a library program, it captures it. It helps me if I have a group, especially because often with libraries, for instance, they'll say, we're booking you for an after school program for elementary age children. It's whoever's at the library at the moment that walks in that room, right? So sometimes I'll have younger siblings who are toddlers and mixed in with 12, 13, 14-year-olds, mixed in with 90-year-old grandfathers. And the live bugs do help equalize that. Yeah, it's and then with nature journaling too, there can be quite an attention span difference. I mean, for me, I'm okay with some kids are going to be actually doing journaling. Other kids are going to run off and catch some more things and hardly write anything in their journal. And unless you feel for some reason a pressure to make the journal always be happening, I kind of allow that regulation. Yeah, that's tough. It's a tough thing. I know, like in my classes, I mix up a lot of things. So when I'm dealing with a mixed group, I often find bringing things like recordings of insect sounds, taking a moment to do some movement where we're mimicking the way a bug moves, things so that it's not so much sitting and doing that. But with nature journaling, it's a little different. You want some sitting and focusing, right? And there's a lot of individual activity going on as they guide themselves through that. Yeah, Bethany mentioned iNaturalist. iNaturalist is great. It can be inaccurate for insects sometimes, but yeah. Yeah, I don't, Susan asked about if there's a plant galls for Eastern North America. I don't think there is, because I think this one specifically had to do with somebody in Sonoma County who's a specialist on plant galls, who's the author. But there might be. Plant galls are fascinating. Oh, Sarah would like to know, do I have an absolute favorite invert, even if it's just today's favorite, and why? Oh, man. What is today's favorite? That's a hard one. I'm always partial to beetles, and I have beautiful beetles right now. I'll show you guys some beautiful beetles right now. I have Goliath beetles right now, and they're just gorgeous. It's kind of an extra blessing when I get to keep these alive. So this is a male Goliath beetle from Equatorial Africa. But this individual was born in Los Angeles, just like me. So he came from a breeder in Los Angeles. These are one of my favorite bugs to have for classes, but the big catch is, as a beautiful, glorious adult like this, they only live 2 to 6 months and cost about $200. So they're very expensive to have for these sorts of classes. So every now and then I'll buy some. And in fact, a couple times right now I have a male and female pair, and I had another male and female pair last year, and they produced a larva. And this is actually a good segue, because one of the things I love nature journaling about with bugs is life cycles. And that can be a great ongoing activity that you do with people. It can also be an in the moment activity. So if you happen to observe bugs in their different life cycle stages together on a plant or out in nature, you can do that. If you're doing something like in the classroom, like I will say that for my nature journal class that I do at the high school, it's 3 times a year. And some of those times a years, it can be very rainy, because where I live in Northern California, we get all of our rain in the winter. And so there have been times where I always have to have some rain day activities for those students. And so purchasing some bugs in various life cycle stages is a great way to do that. The quickest, easiest way, like if you're doing a class and you want to have some caterpillars for the class, my go-to is I go to a local pet store and buy hornworms. Hornworms are sold live to feed to things like bearded dragons. They turn into a moth, and they're very handleable. They're really great for nature journaling, and they can be excellent for that. So let me show you some nature journaling of life cycles. You can get one of those butterfly kits too, that you can get online. You just cover these beetles. You can go to a garden store and get things. Because I mentioned him, I'll show you the baby of these. Quite spectacular. This is a baby of that same kind of beetle that I'm rearing right now. So he's going to get bigger than this, and then turn into a pupa, and then turn into one of those beautiful beetles. The whole life cycle is over 1.5 years long, but the adult part of it's not very much of that, only 2 to 6 months. So yeah, I can show you, let me show you a couple of the things I've done with life cycles. Here's another, this is let's see, this might end up being upside, well, here. So this is a journal entry I did on silk moths. So I had some silk moths recently. So this is a silk moth caterpillar. This is a common one a lot of teachers will have, or that you can order online. With insects, I often do the actual size bar to show the actual size. This one, I did a range of sizes for them. I did some motion things. I was observing how their black legs, their little pro legs opened and closed, and that was new to me how they did that. I did some estimates of how many individuals and what sort of coverage they did per Jack Laws's, percent coverage. So this is a great way to do that. Do I have my recent one? I had a journal last year where I did one where I followed some chrysalises as they pupated, or, caterpillars pupated, marked what date they pupated, then, drew what they looked like when they came out. I also watched them eating and timed how often they pooped. So, simple things like that, where you can just kind of quantify different things about life cycles of a bug. Let me see if I thought I put out some other life cycle ones in here. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is to observe different life cycle stages. Oh yeah, there's a harlequin beetle. So these are another beetle that I kept, and I had larvae and I had adults, and I had these pupal cases, and things like that. So this, the life cycle ones can be really great, whether you have them all there, or, if you're working with a group of students over the course of a couple weeks, you can set up some kind of life cycle one. Oh, somebody asked about praying mantises. So praying mantises are, handleable. I have a rule of thumb with praying mantises: if they are, I often get them as babies because they live only a year. And so once they get, maybe an inch long is when I start to feel comfortable bringing them to classes and handling them. The trick with praying mantises, I'll bring out a couple mantises. See, so some of them have wings as adults. A lot of the wild ones you'll see in North America will have wings as adults. Some of them don't. So this is a ghost mantis. This is a female of an African species that mimics dead leaves. Oh my gosh, she's so plump. She's been eating a lot. So she is an adult and she will never get wings. Her male counterpart, he actually passed away last week. I wish I could show him to you, but it turned out some isopods that were living in his tank with him ate him by the time I noticed he had died, because he died while I was at Disneyland with my kids. So he had wings, so he would sometimes fly across the classroom. So that was a little tricky. But mantises, yeah, with mantises, I never grab them. Like I never kind of really grabbing them. I just coax them from place to place. And mantises show a behavior that a lot of insects show, which is they like to climb up. So you'll often, if you want to get it to go to somebody else's hand, they instinctively will put it below yours. But if you get them to put it above, and then you just give her a little nudge, and hopefully she'll eventually go up. And sometimes they want to do it badly enough that they'll just be going up and up and up. So mantises are a good one. Occasionally, some mantis species are known to be a little more defensive, and they will kind of whack at you with their legs, front legs. This is a large Asian mantis. Oh, and that was Nerisse, and this is Hunter. I haven't been introducing, and the beetle was John. So Hunter, he's pretty used to being handled at this point. So he doesn't really do very much defensive behavior at all. Sometimes they'll do startle displays and things like that. But the thing I love about mantises is because they're so visual, they'll really engage with people. Like he's staring at me right now. Now he's looking at the screen. So that's a lot different, because I think that's a big part of people's fear of insects is they don't know where the face is. They don't know where the eyes are. They seem very alien and foreign. And so I think having something that looks back at you can be very helpful in creating that connection that people have trouble creating with them. So yeah, that's the same kind as the one Avea that Gargi and Akshay wrote all their things about. So mantises are another one. You can get mantises online often. You can get mantis egg cases. That's another thing you can do at a garden store and raise those with kids, but they are highly cannibalistic. So once they emerge, they gotta kind of spread out. Yeah, yeah. And Susan said she sees a lot of Chinese mantises. I just recently, last year, for the first time, finally caught a California native mantis, because most of them are non-native ones that have been released for the garden industry. Yeah.
Oh, Lisa had a question, and I'm sorry if I missed the answer. Is there a common backyard bug that's not highlighted as much? Like for example, the ladybug gets a lot of notice.
Yeah, I would one of my favorite ones, and I could pull out a display and show you what these look like, but syrphid flies. So, oh, actually, I have a sticker on this of a syrphid fly. So syrphid flies are an important pollinator. They are often mistaken for bees because that's what they want you to do, right? They want you to think that's a wasp. And they're one of the most common insects in my yard, but I think a lot of people see the black and yellow and they automatically think bee, and so they assume when they know what it is, and then they avoid it, right? Because they think it's a honeybee. So that is that's a really common one that I love talking about, because flies don't often get the credit they deserve as pollinators. And then you can talk about mimicry. And yeah, you are spelling syrphid right, Avea. So yeah, syrphids are great. They're so common. They're really diverse.
I feel like that one, I mean, you definitely tap into how I feel about the PR that some bugs get when you say like ladybugs, for instance. I love ladybugs. Ladybugs are awesome, but ladybugs and monarchs don't need any more PR. Like there are so many neglected bugs. All of the native bees, that's so crucial that we educate people about native bees and all the ground nesting bees, because that's something that you can do if you do investigations into like leaf litter and all the things that people learn about all the other bees, then they understand that when they're making choices like raking up every single leaf in their garden immediately in the fall, that they're affecting the habitats for a lot of these native animals. So that's, one of my favorite things about insects that I often speak about is, you can sometimes, I don't know if you're like an armchair naturalist and you're watching one of these movies or documentaries about some family who has some land in Africa and they've set up a sanctuary and you're like, oh, I would do this and that and this and that. We all like have, even if you live in an apartment and just have a little balcony, like we all have some control over habitats for insects, because they can be so small. My daughter's school had some, they're not even native, they had some lantana bushes in the front of the school. And for years at this school, both my kids went to this elementary school. My daughter just graduated. So for many years, I would be at the front of the school and watch kids catching skippers. And they'd catch these skipper butterflies in their hands and let them go. And it was a major activity at the end of school every day. And then the school paved over where the lantana bushes were. And now I never see that happen. And it was just 3 bushes. It's not a big, So that's something that I feel like we can educate people about, and showing them what's there helps kind of make that spark of that. So when they see these ground nesting bees and they realize that the bees that really need our saving are bees that they can help by not raking up all their leaves right away, by understanding that. Yeah, shield bugs. Wasps are one too. They're so, yeah, I would definitely recommend learning about wasps more. There's a great book by Eric Eaton. I think it's up here. Where is it? I know I have it. I just need to find it. Why? Oh, here, I just found it. I'm gonna stand on my chair. I have bookshelves right in top. So this is a great, great book about wasps. Just excellent, talks a lot about, tries to demystify, right? And I would definitely say that as educators, one of our roles is to try to combat misinformation, right? When you see those memes, even people who have a very strong sense of environmentalism will sometimes post these things where they'll say, they'll show a wasp and they'll say this is like nature's ultimate jerk. They'll malign these animals, and they'll so just to call that out if we can, and to try to counter that, because wasps are incredible, and a lot of them, even though I said don't pick them up often, I often tell kids, if we're going to go out in the field and you hear me say wasp, don't assume it's a yellow jacket, because a lot of the time I'm seeing tiny wasps that are not going to sting us, not going to hurt us. But yeah, I would highly recommend this book by Princeton University Press by Eric Eaton, if you want to learn more about wasps. Let's see. Yeah, hoverflies, definitely. Yeah, they're the same as hoverflies. Yeah, they're a great one to teach about. Anybody have any other questions? Would any of you be interested in seeing what I put together for my nature journal class? Like what I give the students with that $200 budget? Okay. So they get one of these backpacks. They get these on Amazon. The more you buy, the cheaper they are. But again, I had a $200 budget for 20 students. So, and I didn't just spend it on this. And then within this, and I like the bright colors because then we can tell if we've left them. This is the journal that I've used for years. Oh, what company makes these? They have this little rooster guy on the back. And oh, you can't even see him because he's embossed. I don't know if I have any of these in a with its package right now, but they come in a pack of 2, and they sell these at my local art store, so they know when I'm going to be teaching. It starts with a K, and it's a German company, I think, but they're great, and they have different sizes, and these end up being like $2 a piece, and I found they work really, really well. I have our Quick Start Nature Journal guide. They each get one of those. I take them to the Foster Museum. You know Tony Foster, so they often give me one of those, and we do a field trip for them, so I give them a bookmark. But then again, another Amazon thing, I get one of these, a bunch of these pouches. And if anybody's, I can send you the links. Stephanie at beetlelady.com or through my contact form on Beetle Lady, I can send you the exact items. I ended up going for Crayola watercolor pencils because I could get a big class pack of these that I could use I often had leftovers then for the next time I taught, and these are great. I made a point of when I teach the nature journaling class to the students, I use the same supplies they use because I don't want them to see me and to think that the reason I'm drawing a bug better than they are in their minds is because of the materials, right? A regular number 2 pencil. I got these little pencil sharpeners, a few dozen of them on Amazon, and they have the little, the top so they can kind of contain their stuff in the field. Ticonderoga eraser. I bright color too, because then if they leave it there. These are some rulers that I give out for nature journaling too. I'm not sure. I'm still deciding if I want to do the rulers and this, but on Amazon I also found a place where you can get measuring tapes for not very much, by the dozen. The one splurgy pen I give them is I give them the Micron, the PN one, which is the one that doesn't have a nib, because then it doesn't get totally destroyed, right? Or it has a nib, but it's a flexible plastic nib and not the sticky outy nib that, you know what I mean, with it breaks so easily on those. So I like these, and it's waterproof too, so that they can, right, do that. And then what they get, I actually found a place on Amazon that sells these in bulk. They get a water brush, and these work great. I really like them. They're a little short too, so they're nice because they're compact. I've even taken to use some of these just in my regular nature journaling. I might in the future get them a little wristlet like we sometimes use the sweatband. But right to start with, since I was also using some of the budget to buy more permanent things for the class, like fossils and things to have in the classroom for them to observe on rainy days, I give them a blue shop towel, which was something I learned from a watercolor teacher a long time ago. It's just like a heavy duty paper towel, right? You can get them at Home Depot kind of places or auto repair shops, and they're great because they're a lot stronger and much more reusable. But that's for cleaning off your water brush. I did give the students a magnifying glass one term, and then they said, "Oh, we really just use those in the classroom." Oh, and they get one of these bug jars in here. I just hadn't put them in there. But that's what I give them for the nature journaling class. And then I have some things that they can use in the classroom. And I bring in things like fossils. I bring in specimens of bugs. I bring in leaves. I bring in, every now and then I'll go to the grocery store if I know it's going to rain, and I get a bunch of mushrooms and things like that they can dissect, and that sort of thing. But that's what I found works for them. Oh yeah, baby wipes too. Yeah. So yeah, there's kind of like that. What I give that's what every student actually get. Oh yeah, link to the bug jar. Let me do that. I love them.
Then I'm seeing a couple more questions. If we have time.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sarah's asking, is there a bug or beetle you've not seen yet but you'd love to?
Oh my gosh. Yes. There is a really large, so there's a group of beetles called staphylinid beetles. I'm going to do local ones that I want to see, because of course I want to see like things all over the world. But local ones in California that I want to see, there's a kind of a rove beetle. Rove beetles are kind of a beetle that's going to look a little more earwiggy to you because their wing cases are shortened. So instead of having the long, hard back of a beetle, they have these kind of shortened little wing cases that are like kind of square or rectangular on their back. And they still have flying wings under there. And there's a large rove beetle that occurs in the beaches in Northern California. It's like big for a rove beetle. It's like 2 inches and it's tan. And I've always wanted to see one of those. And whenever I go to the beach, I'm like lifting up the, the kelp and stuff that's on all the seaweed, looking for them. And the other one is there's a big beetle. It's in a group called the Bostrichids. I actually was just photographing specimens at the Cal Academy of them, and they live in palm trees. And these were so coveted by entomologists that they actually will sometimes keep a secret where they've collected them from other entomologists because they don't want them to find them. But they'll be in like these certain palm groves near Palm Springs and that area in California. And I'm not even totally sure if they've been here a while. So if they're not native, they're not a recent introduction. But yeah, they're huge and pretty amazing. What tropical one would I love to see? Oh no, there's one of the most recently discovered insect orders, and orders are things like beetles and butterflies and moths, is a heel walker. It's called the Grilloblatodidae, and they look kind of like a walking stick but they have raptorial front legs like a praying mantis, and then they walk on their heels. And they were discovered in the 1990s. And they only occur in Africa, and so I've never seen one of those, and it's a whole order of insects, so that would be kind of cool. Yeah, recently discovered order is a pretty big deal. Yeah.
I hope you get to see all of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, one of the art projects that I've been wanting to make time for is I know there's this wonderful artist in Arizona, and she's under Random Planet Art. If you want to look her up, she's got an Etsy shop. She's a zookeeper at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, and she's a friend of mine. And she does all these drawings of iconic insects of the Sonoran Desert. And so I've been asking entomologists, actually, when I was at Cal Academy a couple weeks ago, photographing bugs for my book, I was asking people, what do you think are iconic California insects? Like, what are ones that you think are iconic? I think that would be really great to do a series of art drawings of, the one I actually started on already is the dog-faced butterfly, because that's our state insect. But I want to do other iconic insects, and then maybe eventually someday make like the art prints that people do where it's like the outline of the map and then kind of fill it with insects, because I often see really great art that's like homage to the animals or wildlife of a certain state. Yeah, Xerces would be another, of course. Yeah. So I'd love to do that. So I'm trying to kind of think of, California is pretty diverse in its habitats, right? So I'm trying to think of what are probably grilloblattids, which are different from Grilloblattodia. That they're the ones that oh, you know what? There are these ice walkers that are in the Sierra, so they would be a good one too. So yeah, they have antifreeze and that sort of thing.
I hope you get to see all of those bugs and more. All of them and more. And, we have time for one more question. I love ending on this note. Lisa asks a really fabulous question. Can you tell us 5 things that everyone could do in their yard to draw in more bugs and have more bug habitats?
Yeah. So planting natives, that's huge. The more that you can plant natives, I took out my lawn 7-8 years ago, maybe even more than that. I think I just saw one of those social media memories. I think it might have been 9 years ago. And I had been telling people, like, if you replace your lawn right? With native plants, it'll astonish you. But it, even having preached that, it is so amazing to me what I see in my front yard that I don't see in the rest of the neighborhood. Um, so I did a lot of, I'm in Northern California, so I did a lot of, I have like sage and penstemon and sticky monkey flower and things like that. And the plants are so crazy. They get overgrown because it's the habitat they're adapted to, and the bugs are going crazy on it. So the best you can do is to do native. The next best is then just things that will support different, host plants. In California, we're lucky that we have this really great database in the form of a website called Calscape, where you can look up like your local butterflies and moths and find out what host plants they need. So host plants are a big part of that too. Leaving the leaves. So, I understand I have some concrete in my backyard. I sweep up from it, but the leaves that are on there really aren't, that's not leaf litter habitat. But if you can resist wanting to like take all of the leaves out of your yard, that's a huge thing that we can do. And if you don't have a yard, having just plants in a planting box, just, a couple things like I mentioned with that lantana, like that, there was 2 bushes, that's not, it wasn't a huge space. It wasn't like the school took out this giant landscaping area. It wasn't a very huge space. So that can be really helpful. Do your research on things. So things, one of the main things is I'm constantly fielding people asking questions a lot in my like local neighborhood groups, especially if they know I'm an entomologist, about where people are wanting to spray because they have spiders in their house or things like that. While there are some insecticides that can be very specific, targeting certain groups, such as if you know about Bt toxins, they can be specific to, you can have Diptera specific Bt toxins, so they'll only kill flies. But we were just talking about syrphid flies, right? So it will kill those in addition to your pest flies. So just an understanding that no matter what a pesticide company is trying to sell you, that things are very rarely only killing your target things. So these complaints that we have that we're not seeing the diversity that we saw of insects that we grew up with. A lot of that has to do with how much is being sprayed in our yards, how much our yards are monocultures of grass and lawn and non-native plants and things like that. So that's a huge thing you can do, is to just tolerate having an occasional visitor. I mean, might be preaching to the choir in that, like, if we're a nature journals, maybe we don't mind nature coming into our house every now and then and recognize that we've built our houses where nature is. But yeah, just to be more tolerant of that and to encourage a tolerance of that. Because it's, and it'll get to the point where like I fielded a question a few weeks ago where a woman had a newborn that she was worried about having silverfish in her house, and she was planning on hiring a pesticide company to come spray. And anything that they're going to spray is going to be way more harmful to her newborn than having silverfish in the house ever would. But that's not the mentality of a lot of people, because they have these kind of large fears. What else? Where I was starting to say about doing your research is there's a lot of products that get sold with good intentions, like these bee hotels. But just do your research, because some of these bee hotels are not really providing good habitats for the bees. So just to look into whether, especially if you can get any certification from something like Xerces Society or Nature Conservancy on some of these products. Because if you're going to go to like a craft store and they're selling, or TJ Maxx and they have like one of these bee hotels, it's probably not going to be a good habitat for them. Whereas ones that are actually constructed with the bees requirements in mind would be. Having some sort of a watering thing. You can get like these cute little ceramic like watering dishes that allow, especially as we're dealing with climate change and increased heat, to have water sources for arthropods in our yard. can also be really good too. Yeah, yeah. I would, that's kind of the general advice that I would give on that.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Everybody, I just saw so many good questions in the chat, and I saw so much excitement, people listening. Wasn't that awesome?
Oh yeah, and thank you, Sarah, for posting. Yeah, when it comes to things like in the UK, like I may not be totally aware of you know, all sorts of places have their local experts that are really great to follow.
I want to give a huge thank you to, yeah, oh, sorry, I'll spotlight. I want to give a huge thank you to you for being here with us today, and
Of
just,
course.
and if people have more questions, is there a way they can contact you?
Yeah, so my email is stephanie@beetlelady.com, but really anything at beetlelady.com comes to me since it's my own domain. And if you forget that but can remember Beetle Lady, there's like a form on my website where you can contact me. So you're welcome to contact me that way. And yeah, if you have questions come up, I'd be happy to answer them if you're trying to figure out what, you know, what if something is the right thing to use, or you know, where a good resource. I saw somebody mentioned ethically sourced insects. If you captive bred insects are the best way to go for like I tried to keep all of my things captive bred, so none of these animals that I introduced to you today, except this dude who's a local guy that I caught, are wild caught. And by largely what I'm trying to avoid is having people, there's a big problem called brown boxing in the hobby of people going to places like South and Central America, collecting wild inverts, especially tarantulas, putting them in plain brown boxes and shipping them to the US and trying to, you know, to make profit off of them. So I could give you lots of, I could name different people I've dealt with as far as like tarantula breeders and things like that. There's a lot of really good ones out there, and mantises. But rather than just spitting out a bunch of names, if you have one that you're looking for, let me know and I can put you in the right direction. As far as dead specimens, I would also be really careful with that because there's a lot of poaching. The company that is reputable for that is a company called BioQuip Bugs. I'll put it. And they are run by entomologists. And so if you want to purchase insects from them, by and large, if you're going to look up things on eBay or Etsy, you're going to possibly be supporting some illegal poaching of wild insects. So that's for dead insects. BioQuip Bugs used to sell some live stuff, but I think they've maybe moved away from that. But yeah, captive bred is the big thing, and you have to be able to know that something, and you might pay a little more, right? Because if somebody's captive breeding a tarantula, they've put a lot of work into that animal to get it to grow up, whereas a brown boxer is going to be just happy to make money.
Thank you so much. I love your passion and your wealth of information and how accessible you make this for us. To love bugs too, because like you were saying earlier, you model this. And so I hope that either it's us taking steps towards getting ourselves more interested in the insects, or for our students, but either way, like, let's all be more like Stephanie.
Oh, thanks. And I'll mention, if any of you email me in the next few days, I am going backpacking Monday through Friday of next week. So hopefully I'll have no cell phone reception and I'll be in the Sierra. So just be patient. I try to have a job where I'm not at the computer all day. So. If I don't answer email. I live in Silicon Valley, so I get driven crazy by people who like think an email is like an instant response because I don't live that life. I'm like, I'll check it today at some point, maybe tomorrow. So just be patient with me if you do email me. That might take me a couple days.
We'll know that you're having a good time in the Sierra. So that's good.
Yeah, with my nature journal. Gotta pack that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone.
And to everybody who was here and asked questions. And we'll see you next week for more fun shenanigans.
Yeah, I've got to come to more of these. trying to make more time for stuff like this. So maybe you'll
We'd
see
love
my.
to- We'd love to have
Thank
you.
you, Avea, very much for organizing this. This is shout out to you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.